OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're welcome back. The Premier League is back this weekend, and we're delighted to announce that Off the Ball has agreed a new 3-year deal for live and exclusive Premier League commentaries every Sunday of the Premier League. Starting this Sunday, we will have a double header. At 2 o'clock, we're going to bring you Manchester United against Brighton. Myself and Brian Kerr will be covering that one. And then it's West Ham against the champions Manchester City. Kenny Cunningham alongside Stephen Doyle to look ahead to the new season. We're joined by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly. Good morning, David.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
Very well. We're going to talk about our title winner, top 4, bottom 3, players to watch, all that usual sort of stuff. How much of all your predictions hang on Erling Haaland?
I'm dreadful at predictions, but look, you would imagine he's going to score an absolute bundle full of goals, and if you say anything different, you'd be crazy. However, there was a couple of signs, I guess, in the Community Shield where maybe, you got to remember you're playing with the player with the best brain, arguably, in the Premier League, in Kevin De Bruyne. And maybe a couple of times he didn't quite make the run that De Bruyne was looking for. So it'll take time, I think, for them to gel. But nonetheless, you'd imagine he's going to be, the runaway leader in it because they create so many chances. He'll be the top scorer. I'll be amazed if he isn't.
Wow, I'm not sure about that.
Wow, really? I think City just create so much. I think he'll be the top scorer.
The strange dynamic with City is how many goals can you score and how many more important goals can you score. So last season they scored 99, the year before 83, the year before 102. Like, they've always scored an enormous amount of goals.
Yeah.
So I guess it's in terms of the difference his goals will make, and will they take away from goals elsewhere around the pitch?
Look, put it like this, lads, right? The amount of times I would work on games with Man City and he'd have... he played Phil Foden as a 9 v Brighton. He played Jack Grealish as a 9 against Watford, right? None of them worked. He played Jesus as a winger. Never played him down through the middle. I mean, he's an out-and-out goal scorer. I know it's only pre-season, but obviously he's banging the goals in for Arsenal. My point being, you put a centre-forward in that team, and last season, I think, was the first time someone got into 20 for them. You go to the season before, I think it was only Gundogan that got in the double figures. The goals are spread around the pitch. That's only because they had to be spread around the pitch.
Is that not the Guardiola way that actually he wants that patient style of football that may frustrate? Because the problem with the Community Shield is everyone's reading so much into one game, and like there was the De Bruyne getting frustrated with Haaland not making the run, there was Haaland getting frustrated with De Bruyne and not picking out when he did make the run. That City are so used to being patient, to holding on to it, whereas Haaland, it may actually suit him to be the centre of everything and to go through him quickly. And is that not a big change in style for City?
No, because I think they can play a couple of different ways. Don't get me wrong. I mean, teams traditionally will sit in against them and then you've got to break them down. But I mean, the delivery they get from wide, the quality through the middle of the pitch, able to hit balls long. I'll be amazed if he's not top scorer.
He's 11 to 4 actually. I was just looking at it. Salah has been usurped as favourite for probably the first time in a few years. Would you have any concerns about Salah this season in terms of him being the player that?
No, I think Salah, there seems to be concerns about him ahead of every season, and I think he is still one of the most underestimated players there's been in the Premier League.
Which is mad, yeah.
He was by far and away the best player on the pitch in the Community Shield this weekend. Like his touch was consistently unbelievable.
I think he tailed off a bit last season, David. My problem with Salah is that he plays so much that he does need a break, and in fairness, he has had that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, they don't have the African Cup of Nations this year, so that's one thing.
And he's not going to the World Cup.
Yeah, he's not going to the World Cup, exactly. Now, if you go back to his form after the Africa Cup of Nations, he'd played 4 games, all went to extra time. He looked absolutely dead on his feet, missed a pen. A contrast with Sadio Mane, who obviously came out the African Cup of Nations on a high, and he just flew after Christmas. And ironically, I think it's Jurgen Klopp's loyalty. I looked at this. Why did Mane leave? And the amount of times that Klopp had to make a change or wanted to make a change in the striking department, and it would be Mane the one to come off. I think in the end, Mane just got fed up with that because of Klopp's loyalty to Salah. So I think he wanted to go and be the main man. Like, I'm the one that always stays on, which he'll get at Bayern Munich, which he, Jurgen just had Salah. So, but he very, very rarely came off. And the amount of times they would score late goals, Liverpool, and Mane wouldn't be there, certainly in the first little part of the season. So, look, I think Mo will still score goals. I think he's an ultimate pro. I mean, he's built for football, very durable. He'll always be fit. He's never injured. He'll be up there challenging, of course.
Can we have a seasonal match bet of a steak meal that Salah gets more goals than Haaland?
Do you know what? I'd love him to, but I have a feeling I'm going to go with. Well, you might be right. I mean, because Salah.
Hedging his steak meal here.
Well, I think you see David understands that he eats his steak in a better restaurant than you do.
I'm not sure about that.
maybe a happy meal somewhere, just in case. I'm not that confident.
It'll always be a happy meal.
City have, they've made, in a way, quite radical changes with Haaland coming in, letting Raheem Sterling go to one of their rivals, Gabriel Jesus going to another strong Premier League side. They've also brought in Calvin Phillips. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Is it a one in, one out with himself and Rodri every second week, or can they play together? It doesn't look as though they're going to sign Cucurella at this stage, that he's going to go to Chelsea. Are City stronger heading into this season than they were at the end of last season?
I think it's a good question. I mean, what I would say is, I wonder how happy the players are there. Because I said this last season, but, he didn't even know, the manager, that Fernandinho was going. Fernandinho didn't even tell him until he said it in a press conference, which, imagine that, you're I think he was club captain, right?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah, imagine that, you're club captain, not telling your manager, which to me spoke volumes. Jesus couldn't wait to leave and go and play. Jack Grealish looks, half the player that he was, because he's never played wide. I mean, and when he has, he lasts 60 minutes. So I don't know. I don't know if they are stronger. I think the addition of Calvin Phillips is a superb one, especially for the money. But I think they are stronger in essence. Haaland coming in, Calvin Phillips coming in. I think they are stronger. But it just shows you, I guess, maybe some clubs might have kept hold of Raheem and been even stronger. But it just seemed like Pep, I don't know. He has that way. I think he can lose players by the looks of it, and they can kind of.
That's true as well.
To move on a little bit.
Well, there's the intensity. Listen, to both these managers, the intensity and the pressure they put on you every single week, that and the success they've had. Maybe some players.
I think Liverpool seems more enjoyable though.
Absolutely.
I think I definitely got the feeling, David, that Sterling, I'm not sure he was overly happy there for some time. The Aguero comments are interesting. The back of the
Aguero's been talking about Erling Haaland, saying he had a bit of a rude awakening. He was too used to Germany. Haaland thought he was alone. Then Van Dijk arrived and said, "Welcome to the Premier League," which is interesting coming from Sergio Aguero. And again, it's not a done deal with Erling Haaland, and we don't want to get into the quality of the Bundesliga, but he was the big dog there, and he's also not going to go up against defenders of the quality of Virgil van Dijk every week. But it's in the games against defenders of the quality of Van Dijk, they're going to need him, because City, we know, batter most teams. They'll score goals against most teams. So is he going to be clinical in those matches? You have to assume he is. I'm with you, David. If he stays fit, he scores 25 goals this season.
Well, look, put it like this. I mean, it's not as if he's only just wanted a central striker. Last season, he tried to get Harry Kane, and he didn't. So, for him, they've been amazing. They've made do without a central striker, to be honest, for 2 seasons. So, but it is one where we've seen an awful lot of Erling, scoring great goals and bullying people and getting in behind, etc. Pep demands an awful lot of his players. His coaching on the side is non-stop. I mean, the times I've seen Jack Grealish and the like be berated by him in terms of he's not playing that role the way he wants, and he's pretty ruthless, he'll take him off. Whether he's a striker's coach, I don't know, because, he'll take you off after 60 minutes and you think, whereas I think Jurgen Klopp got it right with Núñez, starting him as sub, coming on in the Community Shield, because if he'd have started, he would have come off. And then if you start and come off, he'll be called a failure. you know. And you look at the amount of times clubs sign strikers. I've been a striker myself. The best way sometimes to get a goal is often coming off the bench, and then you're integrated gradually. I mean, now the weight has lifted. I just thought that was really good management from Jurgen.
You didn't want to start those games, David. Better off the bench, boss.
Yeah, well, you know, there's something in that, right? Because if you'd have started that,
pressure.
People were,
yeah, you're looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, and people pre-season saying his touch was terrible, looking at video clips and all this sort of stuff. You know, but before you know it, you know, instead he comes off the bench, spaces are a bit bigger, he's involved in a couple of goals late on, and bang, you know, he's hit the ground running a little bit.
What's your front three for Liverpool, actually?
Well, if it was me, I think Luiz has to play. I love Jota, and I love Salah, and I reckon that would be my three.
There's so many options now. Like they've so many options, and like one of the question marks over Liverpool is like Mane going, and like the debate around the front three has been interesting with Liverpool for years. That's why I often feel Salah's been underestimated. You know, Firmino always got this huge credit. He's the one who links everything together, and like Salah and Mane is the one who provides the energy and that real fight and sets the tempo of that high press. And now Mane is gone, but like they've got the replacement already. In Diaz. Like Diaz was one of the best players in the league. Now I know he was very quiet in the Champions League final, but like in the last 3-4 months he was exceptional and seems to have that little bit of bite and nastiness in him as well, and the work rate. A lot depends on Núñez. Like Jota faded a bit, it seemed, when Diaz arrived in, and the goals weren't quite as plentiful. He's coming into the season with an injury. Like there is an opportunity there for Darwin Núñez if he can start quickly. That it's quite straightforward for Jurgen Klopp again. That it's that front three. There's so many games. It's such a crowded calendar. Like everyone will get a chance, but that maybe that becomes the new front three for Liverpool quite quickly.
Well, I think. Look, I think there's not a little bit of disservice, but that number 9 role, whether it's Firmino, who you know is just incredible with the ball at his feet, but obviously we know he doesn't maybe score the goals. Whereas Jota, when he came in, he was absolutely sensational. He was sensational. You know, all sorts of finishes and goals, ruthless as that central striker. And when I mentioned Luiz earlier, that's obviously Luis Diaz. You know, he was kept a little bit quiet in the cup final. You know, he was kept a little bit quiet. He faded a little bit in that game, but I think second season around he'll be even better. So for me, Jota gets the starting role. And
Núñez is the David Connolly of the team then?
Well, I
off
think
the
Núñez
bench.
I think he has to. I think it's sensible to integrate him like that because, you know, he's just signed a new deal, Jota. You know, he'll get plenty of games this season. As you say, they all will. But for me, first choice front three, Jota's in it alongside Salah and Luis Diaz.
Right. I think just finishing on City, I think that Grealish future is so interesting because like, if Haaland plays as the 9, Mahrez is the main option on the right. Now maybe he can play one of Foden or Grealish on the right hand side, but if Foden and Grealish are fighting it out for one spot on that left hand side, like, Foden's going to win that battle every day of the week, David.
Yeah, he will.
Could you see him? Could you see him playing Grealish a bit deeper this season?
I don't think so. My worry for Jack is where exactly he will get into the team. I mean, I think it is a concern for him because I think he's tried to shoehorn him into the team at times last season, and it didn't quite work. So if you're looking at City's first choice 11, would he get in it? I'm not sure.
Who's winning the league then?
City. I think they will. I think they will, but I think Liverpool will run them close.
A lot of people feel that Tottenham are the team that can run the two of them closest if it turns out that the loss of Mane and Haaland coming in completely unsettles thing, and there's an opportunity that, you know, Tottenham have added incredible depth. I was trying to do my fantasy football team yesterday, Johnny, and I was looking at the Spurs squad, and they've got about 18 defenders, it turns out now. Huge depth. I still sort of feel that we're 4 games away from Conte having a complete meltdown and it all just breaking up at Tottenham as the way it generally seems to. But when you look at Tottenham compared to to where Chelsea are, and things can change over the next 30 days of the transfer window with Chelsea, what's happening at Manchester United, and even with the arrival of Jesus at Arsenal, is Tottenham the pick of those four?
Well, I think if you look at the manager, and the impact he had, and he's going to have even longer now, like from the get-go. The way they ended the season is smashing. I know, obviously, Norwich, but nonetheless, smashing Norwich. Son in form, Kane. I mean, they look very, very strong. The only thing I'd say is I saw them a couple of times last season live, and they were they struggled at times in the wing-back areas. I mean, Doherty, I think, is like, if it was me, I'd be playing him right wing back rather than Emerson Royale at times. I'm not sure on both Spurs wing backs compared to, say, Chelsea's wing backs, But I think when you have the players they've got, I think Bentancur is excellent. Son, Kane. I mean, they've got real quality and they added to it. But I just don't know if their wing backs are as good as other teams, the top. Your Chelseas of this world, for example, or the fullbacks of Liverpool. That it's only when you watch them live a little bit you see where they fall down at times. So we'll have to wait and see.
What of the others then? Chelsea are the hardest, it feels, to figure out at the moment, because they've obviously brought in Raheem Sterling, and he seems to have been a real target for Thomas Tuchel. Even in the last 24-48 hours, they've been linked with 4 or 5 other players that could completely change the way we look at them, and there might be some outgoings. Timo Werner's been strongly linked with a move away. Romelu Lukaku is gone. This time last year we felt Chelsea were in a real position, prime to challenge for the title. Have they dropped off that much?
Well, I think certainly their form at the end, you would say they have a little bit. I mean, they lost Koundé, which they might have wanted really that one to go through. I think Koulibaly's a good signing. I think Raheem will score lots and lots of goals. But I don't know if they've totally solved that central striker. I don't know what Johnny thinks, but I don't really think they have. Last season at times it looked like a bit like Man City, really. They were often struggling to find that central striker, or who would play that central striker, or who would get them goals. We all know Werner's quick; he runs in behind, but misses a lot of chances. Yeah. I'm not quite sure they've solved that.
What's their ambition this season? It's kind of you imagine at best sort of fourth. Would it be at best third?
I wonder. If
I think Arsenal would be
signing
much better this season.
Signing Sterling, gives them I still think Sterling's again a player who maybe doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Yeah,
he's been exceptionally good, and I was surprised that City would still let him go to Chelsea. I think their ambitions are still quite high for Chelsea this season. Now they're in a position where we thought in February, will this club exist come the start of this season, to Thomas Tuchel moaning about not being given the money that he should have been given. And it does look as though they've a lot to do. They've lost centre backs, they want to bring in more centre backs, they want to bring in full new set of wing backs. So let's see where they are come the end of the window. We're going to talk Manchester United with Samuel Luckhurst in a few minutes, so we'll come back to them. I've been told to ask you about the bottom. I hate asking about the bottom three because it's the most difficult one to predict, because most of these teams are going to sack their manager. Somebody else will be in by Christmas, and it changes the entire dynamic of the bottom three. But it does seem, and something again I just noticed when we're doing season previews, an awful lot of them teams outside the lot of top six haven't done a huge amount of good business. There's not too many standout players outside the top six in terms of arrivals into the Premier League. And a lot of teams down the bottom, like Bournemouth, like Fulham, are still in the midst of doing their work, the promoted sides. And Forest, the complete opposite. They've signed, signed a dozen players at this stage. Who are you quite worried about at the start of this season? Me,
I tell you what, I'm worried about certainly about Fulham and Bournemouth. I mean, you mentioned Forest, and if you're say Fulham and you had Nico Williams, who did so well for you, and then he goes back to Liverpool, then he ends up at Forest, you'll be worried. They've only got 2 fit centre-backs, Fulham. I think they played Villarreal the other day. They only had 16 players. If you go back to the last time they got promoted, they kind of kept with the same team, and they ended up then by Christmas with a team of loanees. Scotty Parker brought in a whole raft of players, but none of them were permanent. And in the end, it seemed like it was a club that was just built on guest players, really. And then when they got relegated, they had to build again. I think I'll be really worried about Fulham. Mitrovic will score the goals, we know that. And the next one will be Bournemouth. Because Bournemouth were built on the best defence last season, but half of it's gone. You know, Cahill gone, Cook gone, Nat Phillips gone back to Liverpool. So I know Travis signed a new deal. That's good news for him. But I don't know. I think if you're Scotty Parker, I think you'd be worried. I think they lost to Bristol City pre-season. He said he needed drastic improvement. And I think going up into the Premier League, if you're Fulham and you've only got 16 players, you've only got 2 centre-backs. If you're Bournemouth and 3/4 of your backline's gone, you know, I think you'd be a little bit worried.
The thing about just mentioning Mitrovic, Mitrovic is that I think he's one of those lads that, like, Dan would back him to be the top scorer in the Championship, but it's he scored the goals in the Premier League as well. It's such a massive step up. Memories again of that Serbia game, we go back to it, but like, this is just a massive step up. Will he score the goals?
Yeah, well, you can sort of feel that he's a very good international striker and a good Championship striker, because he just lacks that tiny little bit of pace that maybe you need in the Premier League. Like a couple of other teams that are interesting at the bottom, like Everton losing Richarlison, and it feels as though there's a very bad vibe around the club at the moment. You can imagine Goodison Park a month into the season and it's pretty hostile for everybody involved. And Leeds, who again have lost Rafinha, their best player. Now Patrick Bamford is back and seems to be playing really well in pre-season, so maybe that changes things. But Jesse Marsh is another one who the Leeds fans don't seem fully convinced by. Would you be worried about either of those in terms of relegation?
I would. I mean, certainly if you're Everton, I think it looks like he's the bookie favourite at the minute. You know, Frank Lampard to go down. Now I know they've made some good signings. I think Dwight McNeil is a really good player, but his actual numbers last season were dreadful. You know, I know it was a season where Burnley went down, but nonetheless, I think he had 1 goal, 1 assist, something like that. Look, I think he is a good player, make no mistake, but he didn't have a great season last season. I think Frank will have to hit the ground running. And I don't know, like Vinagre, for example, you know, we've seen him before at Wolves, coming back into the Premier League, but he didn't play in the Premier League before, not that often, I don't think, for Wolves. So I certainly think I'll be thinking that Everton, you know, the fans there, I don't think it'll take them long to turn if they get off to a bad start.
All right, David Connolly, always part of our starting team.
It's the only place.
It's the only place.
Hopefully that won't be replayed in a couple of months. Remember when you said this, Nathan?
Yeah, where am I? David, great stuff.
Cheers, lads.